Warning. This podcast contains blasphemy, heresy, and profanity. Proceed at your own risk.
Don't say no prayers for me, 'cause I'm exactly where I want to be. Yeah, I'm a sinner through and through, and I'll be waiting in hell for you.
This is Dan.
This is Dylan.
Welcome to Skeptical Satanists.
How have we gotten to the point in this country that we celebrate the very things we stood firmly against in the world wars? Did we think that capitalism couldn't take on fascism the same way communism did? So now we have a society that ignores benefits gained by simply being born into money. What good's that done us? We have the top 1% owning the majority of money. We have lower class citizens that have to choose between paying bills to survive and going to the doctor. We have the rich making thousands of dollars an hour while getting to take advantage of corporate welfare. We have people who are middle class looking down on those poorer than them when they get any assistance from the government, while the rich sit on their asses and make profits off the backs of the working class. It's extremely clear who owns this fucking country, and it isn't the people. Has there ever been equality in this country? There's been witch trials, there's been slavery, and now slave wages. The rich old white assholes have had this nation under their thumbs from the start. People in power have money, and in our capitalist society we rely on their crumbs. We've had unions fighting battles in this country, and we've had our government fight its own veterans over scraps from the rich. The Bonus Army, Battle of Blair Mountain, the Battle of the Overpass, the Homestead Strike, the Triangle T-shirt factory fire, the Great Railroad Strike, and the Battle of Mattawan. Those are just a few. Unions shed blood for rights many people have taken for granted, and many people have never even seen. I've seen companies and corporations stand in the way of equal rights. I've seen many working-class citizens stand up for the rich without even knowing it. I've seen conspiracy theories go on without skepticism or questioning, and people suffer every day because of this. This attitude of giving in to the rich and never questioning anything, even when presented with moral contradictories, needs to fucking stop. This idea of this is how it is, this is how it always has been, that needs to be put to an end. Our future generations depend upon it. The corporations don't give a fuck about the working class. These CEOs that make thousands of dollars an hour, they line the pockets of politicians. They feed on people who expect to inherit the earth by staying meek. They rely on your faith to keep them in power. There are other countries with strong unions. There are other countries that are economically successful without keeping their working class citizens under the boot of the rich. This bloodletting of the poor to cure the insatiable needs of the rich needs to fucking stop. We've seen corporate capitalism at its worst. We don't take care of our people, we take care of our corporations. The rich get to bankrupt their companies and move on, leaving the workers without jobs and the poor without any way of bettering themselves. How can we get to this point? Naivety and the lack of critical thinking. People giving their money in the promise of more time and streets of gold. People willing to waste a lifetime on promises of unproven absurdities. People willing to appeal to authority regardless of circumstance, in hopes of an afterlife. Like mushrooms, feed them shit and keep them in the dark. How much evidence does it take to disprove that which isn't true to begin with? How many things that are proven over and over again to be true are enough to disprove assertions with zero credibility to begin with? When do we get back to things that affect us all, rather than things that cost the rich pennies from their profit? When do we quit focusing on the pennies spent on the poor and working class, and start to spend time on focusing on the tax dollars wasted on sustaining a fallacy of the American dream, which has never been proven beyond anything more than that, a dream? When, for that matter, has consumerism been proven to be moral? At what point do we take the needs of the people into consideration over those of the rich? After the Great Depression, we taxed the rich at 90%. It wasn't until after we started implementing more corporate welfare in the form of tax loopholes and corporate subsidies that the working class wages drifted drastically from those of the CEOs. We've lifted taxes, enforced laws that have all but diminished unions, such as right to work, and we haven't increased minimum wage to keep up with the cost of living. You'll hear people bitch that increasing minimum wage will increase the price of products, and yet minimum wage has been stagnant for decades, and that didn't stop the motherfuckers from increasing the price of products at all. And I hear working class citizens making these excuses for the rich, that they'll leave the U.S. if we tax them more. When the fuck has that ever been the case? We've yet to see that fucking happen. And we've taxed them way more than what we'd tax them now. It's an excuse. It's an excuse by the fucking rich to keep the poor down, and to keep us fighting against ourselves. You'll be hard-pressed to find a country that supplies the corporate welfare we supply here while simultaneously being able to take advantage of lower slave labor in other countries by outsourcing. And I could understand if this was decades ago. If this was years and years ago before we had the technology that we have now. We literally carry around with us a vault of information. It's in the palm of our hands, constantly. And yet, nobody bothers. Nobody bothers to look things up. Nobody bothers to look into history. Nobody bothers to look into science. Nobody bothers to look into just checking other countries, looking outside of ourselves and being able to see what's going on around us. This new age stupidity is a disease, and it can be stopped pretty easily just by researching things. So my challenge to every one of you would be to look shit up before spreading ignorance. In this episode, racism needs redefined because apparently racism hasn't been made perfectly clear in the US yet. The Satanic Temple takes up the bitter waters and creates a monumental moment in history for women's rights to autonomy. Steve Hill tells about his deal with the devil. God hasn't quite blessed Africa enough yet, and Louisiana is still, well, Louisiana.
I was reading an article. It had to do with racism, and it kind of went into more of a systemic look at it. So basically, the title of the article is "We Need a Better Definition of Racism." And these are just kind of key points that I picked up from it. So the first definition that they talk about, the author talks about, is race being an observable race. Essentially, the definition of race is an observable biological difference between people in a categorical sense. Ethnicity, because it does try to define these two separately. Ethnicity is people based on a shared cultural background. Again, this is in a categorical sense. So, I mean, if you think about that by itself, you can have different races within an ethnicity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, black isn't, it's a skin color. It's not really a where you're from type of deal.
Agreed. And I mean, I think you can have white people, black people, Asian people part of the same ethnicity if there's a shared cultural experience going on. And this article kind of goes a little bit further with it. So racism, the first definition of racism that they present is basically racism is prejudice. And this definition hinges on the possibility that hatred is not involved. That sounds ridiculous, right? Basically, and again, these are just, I'm just going off of examples of what I've read.
Hatred isn't involved with racism?
There are white nationalists who claim they are not racist because hatred isn't involved. They just prefer white people. These are I'm not joking, Dan. These are definitely philosophies brought forth by white nationalists who claim to not be racist, okay? So, this is kind of like I like black people, but as a prejudice, or not a prejudice, but like a stereotype, they listen to hip-hop. Or on the other end of this, Asians are cool and they're all good at math. That's wildly, you understand, this is...
They all know Kung Fu.
Or they all know Kung Fu, sure. Yeah, the idea that people get these wild stereotypes in their minds about groups of people when they're just, they're just groups of people just like we are. Like white people, we all shop at Gap. I don't know. I don't know what would be a common...
We all hate spicy food.
We all hate spicy food, yeah. I mean, there's a stereotype.
Ranch dressing.
I love ranch.
We're going to move. Many white people that like ranch dressing.
We're going to move on. But anyway, so the definition of racism equals prejudice, it doesn't address individualism, and I think that's where this comes down to. So the next definition kind of speaks to it. Racism equals prejudice plus power. And this is more the systemic approach to it. So basically, this approach takes social and political ramifications into account as a result of cultural racism. And it kind of goes into racist versus anti-racist. There's no middle ground is what the author is proposing here. And this, I never really thought about this because I always thought of myself as an egalitarian. But egalitarianism fits in more with an anti-racist. And here's, I'll define these. So racist on the level that we're talking about here, a racist, systemic racism is basically using a majority race or ethnicity to exact their worldview onto another race or ethnicity within the same cultural sphere, I guess, if that makes sense. So basically, again, we'll just put it into perspective of the United States. So white people creating laws to inherently put black people or the LGBTQ community at a disadvantage. Whereas, being anti-racist would be implementing laws that would put all races and ethnicities and, groups in general on a similar playing field. And I kind of like that view better because, it addresses both sides of it.
Ideally, I think it would be nice to have equal playing field on the order of classes and races and gender, all of it. There's no reason for any of those things.
I think you're right.
Equal.
You're very much right. And, going back to my original point, the issue with having a gray area between being racist and anti-racist, I feel like if you're an egalitarian, you're going to fall on the side of anti-racist because as an egalitarian, you want laws that are going to support the idea that everyone is on an equal playing field. And because of that, it doesn't really fall into a middle ground. You are on the anti-racist side if you're actively working to promote laws and policies and things like that not only promote equal playing ground on a political level or, through power, through laws, through legislation, but also on the social spectrum. You're not, everyone holds bias, everyone holds stereotypes. You can't get away from it. It's human nature to hold stereotypes, even small ones. Point of it's one thing to hold on a personal level. It's another thing to use those type of views and to see how they play out on a political sphere. I think that's where our country's having the problem right now. It's human nature. You're going to have, it's tribalism, essentially. It's just part of the human psyche as a weird defense mode. But it's a whole nother thing when you get onto the level of, proposing laws, proposing legislation. And I think that's where the U.S. is having the problem.
I think we've had that problem for quite a while and we just ignored it. That's the biggest fucking problem. That drug charges and things have been dealt with differently according to specific areas and of the country and in inner cities and things where we've basically forced the minorities into.
You mean forced them into certain areas of living? Oh yeah, like creating suburbs.
Yeah.
And then enacting ordinances to, give certain races the opportunity to move there where minorities wouldn't be able to do that.
And it's a big system of things. Even the way that we've tried to put laws in place to fix things, maybe they haven't fucking worked out too well because it ends up shuffling them into a certain area. Because the wealthy don't want those people around them, so they'll move or they'll go wherever, and then that money isn't being put into the community anymore, and that money isn't going towards those areas to better them or anything. So then you end up with slums, for lack of a better term, I guess. Yeah, it's you start digging into it. There's a whole bunch of things that people don't take into consideration. It's systemic racism.
Way too much involved in that. It's just a big weave. You're talking gerrymandering, the redrawing of lines whenever elections and things like that come up, to allow certain, districts to be reclassified according to movement of population and how they're going to vote, because voting tends to, the type of class that you're in tends to correlate strongly with your socioeconomic status. I mean, it is a whole mess of things that you could get into with that alone. Religion is another factor.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, not having that wealth in those particular areas and stuff, that means water lines don't get replaced as much.
Schools don't get funded the right way.
Schools aren't being funded right.
So education rates propel and cause that vicious feedback.
Books are out of date. They aren't getting the proper education. There's so much to those things, and like I said, with drug laws and things, it placed heftier violations for things like marijuana and crack, but not cocaine.
Yeah.
And that was because the rich, wealthy white people that were businessmen and everything, they could get slapped on the wrist then because they were the ones getting caught with cocaine. Crack was cheaper. And so then you end up with more black people in prisons, or more minorities and groups from those specific poor communities.
And see, now you're getting into more of like a zoomed out government level where it's not just local governments making decisions that separate. You're also getting into, speaking of crack, you're getting into the CIA's involvement in the distribution in black communities of crack. I don't know if you've ever looked into that. It's incredibly
but I haven't.
Disturbing.
Yeah.
It's seen as like a conspiracy theory and all that by most people. You do some research on that. There's a few sources out there. It's wild. But it also comes into question of, the general conversation that happens around this. You tend to also get into that conversation. And there's plenty of people who have sat around their kitchen table and have talked about, all the people in power are, it's people in power versus people who choose to use power for the greater good. And I think that discussion is incredibly important to know the difference between them, because if you look at everyone in power as crooked and corrupt, then you tend to not want to get involved with the voting process to help the situation, and it just continues. Versus, how do you get someone who enables them with power to change the way things are? Does that make sense? I know that's a little bit more abstract, I guess.
To a certain point, it does, but at a certain level, it isn't. It's not really wrong to think that we aren't. The system's so fucked to begin with that we've got corporations making decisions for things in our government that's affecting everybody below that. It's a big battle of the classes, and unions are they've been all but diminished here. They don't have the power they once did. There's not all of the rights and things that they fought for throughout the years are just crumbling apart now. And yet, the wealthy can just keep getting fucking wealthy without even putting much effort into anything at all.
And I think you're not wrong on any of that. I tend to agree that, politicians who have come and gone throughout the years have contributed to that decline on a presidential level, on just through legislation, hell, even state level. There's so many different ways that they have diminished the power of...
I mean, like, how long do you think we would have stayed overseas, like in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and all those places, if it wasn't for politicians that had money in Halliburton, had money in oil, had money in things like that was affecting their pockets? I don't think it's unreasonable to see that there's definitely a connection on that end of things.
I don't think so either. It's usually throughout history the Great Depression ended shortly after we entered World War II. Is that a coincidence? How often have we had a war since? 50s was Korea. 60s into the 70s, Vietnam. 80s, what you had? When was Grenada?
We're still
Grenada.
paying for all of those wars.
We are, and we'll continue to.
World War One, I think I read somewhere where we're still paying for the Civil War for things.
I think there's like 2 or 3 families that are still being paid as a result of that. Yeah, I remember that. I think I read that a couple years ago, actually. I mean, we're still our budget has not been balanced since Clinton.
I mean, it wasn't balanced properly. I mean, after the Great Depression and stuff, we've taxed the rich at 90% after the Great Depression and started to bring us out of it. We had unions that were strong at that time and were in power, that were helping fight for social issues and things and involving workers' rights and regulations on things to keep people from getting cancer and diseases and things that the working class people expose themselves to all the fucking time. And that's merely just to survive in this country. If you're working class, if you're middle class, if you're poverty level, then they expect you to risk your life to make more money. They expect you to risk your health to make more money. I mean, look at the choices you have. If you grow up in a society where the education isn't that great around the area, if people aren't doing their jobs in the schools and trying to actively get you placed into a college or get things done to help you whenever they know that your family isn't financially apt to take care of those things, then you've got this whole thing of just, well, fuck the poor then. You have choices. You can go in the army. You can go into the military, risk your fucking life that way and your health and everything else. You can go into the mine, risk your health and life again. You can go into the construction trades. You can risk your life and health again. What other fucking choices are there that bring you enough money in to pay bills and to give you any kind of a good setting for having kids, for having a family, for having things that the rich can just actively get? They can take care of these things because they inherited money, because they've got enough money to invest into other things to make more money off of, to where they don't have to worry. They don't have to worry about losing a car to wrecking a car, or the car breaking down and then being out of work all of a sudden, and then sliding into being homeless eventually. They don't have to worry about those things. They don't have to worry about their kids being in an area like we're talking about that's the water lines aren't replaced and shit all the time, so your kids are fucking drinking lead or exposed to radon gas or any of the numerous amounts of things that...
Radon's big around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what that is, right? It's radioactive material underground, that it's uranium that's breaking down, releasing gas, and comes up through the cracks of the rocks. And if you have an older home, which most people that aren't wealthy have older homes, then you've got dirt floors. You've got floors that don't have a proper thickness of foundation to keep out that gas, or the proper ways. And to fix those things, it costs you a fortune. And there's no government intervention here to help equal those things out to where it would be possible for people to take care of those things without going into debt even further.
Well, my parents recently, they built a house a couple years ago, and when they got done building the house, they had someone come in and test for radon. And keep in mind, they had one of these outfits that has multiple contractors come in and do the thing. And after they were done, they still had someone come in. The radon levels around here are still high. We had to they ended up having to have someone come in and install one of those systems that actually like extract it out. I even had to have one in my home when I first bought it. It was built in 1902, and the town that my house is in. And just so we're clear, guys, I'm going through a divorce. It's complicated. I'm not living in my house right now. So, but anyway, the house that I did buy, it was older. It was actually in a coal mining town, and we had to have a radon system put in as well as part of the agreement. So, I mean, yeah, I very much understand that.
And I mean, that's the other part of it is the coal mines, when they come through, they absolutely ruin places. They ruin the well water that people rely on in those areas because they can't get city water. And they end up causing people cancer and and this administration's been fucking horrible. The EPA regulations they've cut and everything has made it to where they can dump that waste actively and just fuck the people in. And yeah, sure, it's cheaper. I mean, that's the whole capitalist fucking thing. That's the whole attitude behind this corporate bullshit that we promote here as being this greater good of things that runs the economy and all this shit. And if you aren't taking care of your people, I don't give a fuck how much money you're making. That's not right. And it's not moral by any fucking means. And to think that you're in this country that we're just the greatest country and all this shit and fucking beating your chest and waving the American flag, fuck you. That's a bunch of bullshit.
I mean, and it comes back down to, this whole situation, it class, race, religion, it all ties into a few things, and it seems to be class, it seems to just have a big impact. And they all weave together nice and fine, and it's hard to peel them apart and really address all the issues at once. And really, when it comes down to this whole discussion on all of this intermingling, it really comes down to how do we have, trying to put this, especially from a position of power, or maybe from a position of top down, how do you have empathy for those who are maybe going through something a little bit worse than what you are? And the article that I brought up earlier was kind of going through it from a perspective of race, how to extract empathy from hatred. And the article was going into when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, when they were at their peak, as a result of the Floyd issue, or the Floyd murder. And I'm calling it a murder because that's what it was. What it was going into was this author who grew up in a town where he grew up in a progressive Christian home, and they, more or less, he was taught from a very young age to be a little more tolerant and just open-minded, that sort of thing. And 35 years later, watching protests, these peaceful protesters for the Black Lives Matter movement, and locals who were in town saying, get out of here, you need to learn history, you need to do this. And, at what point on an individual level, did this person come to the crossroads of, okay, well, do I need to reprogram my brain to think outside the box and to adjust and become tolerant, become not ignorant, I guess? Or I'm going to retreat into my bubble and fear any kind of outside information that would go against what I've been taught growing up. And, it just all of this ties together into life experience and what kind of trauma has that person gone through, even from a perspective of, the top down, understanding who you see as your adversary, or understanding who you see as the enemy, understanding what life experience they have. And as a as a country, I think that's what the author's trying to say here, and I happen to agree with him. We're not getting anywhere by trying to win an argument. We're not getting anywhere by simply speaking. We've become mouthpieces, whereas it seems to me that maybe critically thinking about the problem and where's the divide? Where's the gap? The rich versus the poor, the white versus black,
and here's the other thing.
Democrat versus Republican. We're not trying to bridge our understanding and our worldviews and how we can meet in the middle to try to come to a more appropriate truth. We are the skeptical Satanists. We're constantly asking questions. We would love to hear perspectives from all over the spectrum, so to speak. You know, it's important that we understand each other, and if we're coming from the wrong direction, we would like to know. We want to know. That way we can ask questions. That way we can understand the opposition's views in a way that we can adjust our own approach. And you know, that's what makes the world a better place. If we can understand each other, then we can work together to change what is into what needs to be.
This next article comes from Pathos. TST, Satanic Abortion Ritual. Satanic abortions are protected by religious liberty laws. Several years ago in Missouri, a member of the Satanic Temple argued in court that she didn't need to follow the state's 72-hour waiting period for abortions because it violated her religious belief that one's body is inviolable and subject to one's own will alone. The lawsuit was unsuccessful, mostly due to the fact that she was no longer pregnant at the time the judge issued a ruling. It happened again in 2019 when the courts determined a woman could still technically get abortions, and the plaintiff wasn't singled out because she was a Satanist, even though many obstacles were still in the way of the abortion. TST has now laid down groundwork for future battles over abortion, claiming that all first trimester abortions must be exempt from state regulations that hinder access. Those hurdles violate 2 of the 7 tenets regarding bodily autonomy and adherence to the best scientific practices that we have. They've basically used the same Hobby Lobby Supreme Court decision to back their religious rights. In the Hobby Lobby case, an evangelical business owner prevented insurance providers from covering his employees' birth control to defend a woman's right to choose. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, prohibits government involvement when it interferes with someone's religious practices. By saying that abortions in the first trimester are a religious ritual for their members, any states that have their own RFRA laws would have to show why their medically unnecessary restrictions should override Satanist religious freedom. Some laws that may interfere with Satanist right to bodily autonomy are mandatory wait times, burial and funeral of fetal remains, practitioners withholding certain medical information, compulsory counseling prior to abortion, mandatory listening to the heartbeat of the fetus, and requiring reading materials to be read before going through a procedure. The ritual is as follows. Prior to receiving any anesthetic or sedation, look at your reflection to be reminded of your personhood and your responsibility to yourself. Focus on your intent. Take deep breaths and make yourself comfortable. When you are ready, say the 3rd and 5th tenets out loud. You may now undergo surgery. After the surgery is completed and any anesthetic has worn off, return to your reflection and recite your personal affirmation. Feel doubts dissipating and your confidence grow as you have just undertaken a decision that affirms your autonomy and free will. The religious abortion ritual is now complete. There is also a template letter TST offers to give officials for the religious exemption, and it is as follows. Because the abortive act is inextricably linked to the religious right, a burden on the act is a burden on the right. State law implements some or all of the following generally applicable burdens on the abortive act, each of which substantially interfere with my religious beliefs and practices. Mandatory waiting periods, requirements that practitioners withhold certain medical information, compulsory counseling prior to an abortion, requiring reading materials, medically unnecessary sonograms, mandatory listening to fetal heartbeats, burial or cremation of fetal remains. This is all still new territory as far as the courts are concerned, so we'll have to wait and hope for the best with the outcome. But at least it is a step farther in the right direction for bodily autonomy and much more progress than I've seen any other religion present yet.
I always love listening to what the Satanic Temple is doing in regards to this sort of thing, because I'm not part of it, but I very much understand that they are taking something that is violating the person and turning it around into, well, okay, if you're going to allow people certain religious protections, we're going to go ahead and use it to our advantage and protect the person at the same time. There is nothing more noble in my mind than to take upon themselves what they're doing, because it could be used throughout the entire country as a means of protecting women and allowing women to exercise, personal choice in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am a member, but I can't speak on behalf of anything to do with the organization, and I wouldn't. But as far as my personal feelings on all of the issues and everything go, I am completely on board with it, and I'm proud of them coming this far.
Rightfully so. I mean, they're going in a direction that seems to be a little more... It's definitely going to get to be on a national level where I feel like this conversation isn't over, right? There's going to be more articles. There's going to be, at some point, I'm sure there will be some sort of mainstream coverage on this. And whether it's by CNN or Fox or any of the other big three, it doesn't matter. The point here is that they're going to get some sort of coverage outside of local discussion on it, and it's important. It's something. Social media is powerful as well, so it's not just going to stay within certain circles. People are going to see this, and it's going to reach outside of the Satanic Temple community and be more on par with women's rights. It's so important.
I mean, it has me choked up a bit, just because it's so fucking dumb that we've gotten to this point in this country. That you don't recognize a person as a being and having control over their bodies or being able to determine what they do with their own bodies, but you view a fetus as a life and able to have more rights than the person carrying it. And it's just astounding to me. And I mean, I know there's a lot of controversy on these issues, and a lot of it boils down to what we consider a life to be a life. When is that period of life? Or because I mean, there's a reason that the medical field uses the term fetus rather than fucking baby. Those are separate fucking terms. Those are separate things. And as far as being able to determine when life begins, when we look at where life ends, because you could always say the first breath, or you could say the first heartbeat, or you could say the heartbeats before the brain's ever developed. So at that point, you're still looking at a clump of cells, and it's not even formed into anything yet. And yet they want to consider that a life. Well, okay, why aren't we giving that a social security number? Why aren't we giving that a fucking, you know what I mean? Why aren't we, like, it's so dumb, the disconnect with people, that they don't understand, even though we know, because we have fucking laws, that we will not give that a social security number until it's at birth.
I'm not seeing Gerber offer life insurance to 12
Fuck no.
12-week
Yeah.
12-week fetuses. Yeah, and I agree 100%.
And I mean, even when it comes to the heartbeat and shit, there's people that have no heartbeats. There are people with artificial... I just read that a few years ago, where somebody had an artificial heart put into place, and they have no heartbeat at all. It's a pump. That's all they need, is to recirculate the blood, and it's a constant flow. There's no heartbeat at all in that person.
That is wild. So you're saying there's a chance that I could be a cyborg if I ever have a heart attack. I shouldn't even say if. I should say if and when I have a heart attack. That could be a thing.
And then you could say, well, breath. Well, we got people on ventilators and shit that literally, it all comes down to brain activity and shit, doesn't it? But
the reason you breathe, yeah, it's to absorb oxygen and nitrogen.
Yeah.
From the air, yeah. You breathe pure oxygen, you'll die. But for too long anyway, you'll die. But that's beyond the point.
But yeah, I mean, you hook somebody up to a machine and it's doing the breathing for them, and they're still considered alive. So even that thinking of things has been disproven. And I mean, all of that's just, regardless, it's ridiculous that the actual undergoing of following through with a pregnancy is more destructive to a woman's body and puts their life at risk more than what an abortion ever does. And that's scientifically proven. It's medically proven. It's not just bullshit from a fucking book.
Well, think about what they could actually do with that kind of approach to this. Could be taken beyond just abortion. That type of approach could also be taken forward with reproductive rights as a whole. For instance, having women going in at 21 years old to be sterilized and being told by doctors.
I thought you meant the TST's push on things.
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, is the TST could take that and reform it into not just abortion, but voluntary sterilization from women who go in without any kids, without being married, or while married, and was your husband? No. This is a personal choice. A man walks into a clinic and wants to have this sort of thing done. Would he receive this much?
Even farther than that, I'd like to see it cover people's ability to be able to, if they've got cancer, if they've got a
medically
disease, whatever, and they want
suicide. I had a feeling you were going that route with this. Yeah,
because
I agree.
That falls under bodily autonomy as well.
Yep.
And that's something that kind of hits home with me, because I had to watch my grandpa die a slow, agonizing death from cancer. But yeah, I'd really like to see it enforced more. And I mean, TST, they're still pretty young here, and it's still pretty early to tell what else they might challenge, or what else whenever they are able to attain the funding for those things.
They'll get there. Something tells me they'll get there. If they, especially like membership, I can only imagine membership increasing because of this sort of thing. they're coming at it from a point of view that is very humanist and focuses on human beings. You know, you are important, we are important, like as individuals you're important, and it just seems to me that they're going about it that way. And if they continue to push issues like that and focus on autonomy and just fighting for the average person, I think you're going to see some good come out of it. Even if they fail in one attempt, and they may lose a battle, but they're not going to lose the war. Society is inherently progressive. We're not the same we were 2,000 years ago, because as a society, as a species, human beings are constantly evolving their way of thinking. They'll win out eventually, and it's a matter of...
That being said, we cannot allow Trump to decide on the next Supreme Court justices in this fucking country. That would hinder all of this horribly. And I mean, regardless of your feelings on the political system and how it's set up, like, I don't completely agree with how the two-party system's working in this country, but to allow him to get another fucking term is to allow the next several generations to have just rights taken away from them and not be able to benefit from these things that TST's fighting for. I mean, that's my personal belief on it, and I don't think it's ridiculous to think that, especially when we've been witnessing what the fuck happens with Trump under a term, and it's not going to fucking get any better.
Another 4 years will send him into a state of coasting by and acting and pushing for whatever he thinks is going to be a good idea, regardless of long-term effects. Most presidents do that anyway, but regardless, his is an especially abrasive agenda to just humanity, just individual rights. The irony of being in a party that prides themselves on individual liberty,
and keeps kids in cages at the border.
Yeah, and yet he just...
And denies people from coming into the country.
I've never understood.
Trying to legally attain citizenship.
I've never understood the cognitive dissonance it takes to have the sort of platform that he has, and yet allows that sort of thing to happen. It's bizarre. It's the most bizarre shit I've ever experienced.
I think, and this is where people are... It never surprised me that the Christian conservatives were all on board with him. I don't know why it surprised anybody about that. It never surprised me. Their whole idea is to appeal to authority. Their whole idea is to restrict people's rights and everything. It's never been a big surprise to me. And I'd seen it in the church, and I'd seen our pastor wanting him in office before he ever ran. I can remember him talking about that. And even back then, when I was still into religion pretty deep, I can remember thinking, like, you want this asshole that has a TV show that it's just all about his ego and shit, and you want him in office. What the fuck is he going to do? And that wasn't even taking into consideration all of the failed businesses and shit that he's had. Like, it's just incredibly ridiculous. And there's no, like, I mean, say what you want about Kamala Harris, you look at her fucking voting record while she's been in Congress, and it's pretty fucking good. She's got a good track record as far as Democrats go. Much better than fucking Joe Manchin, I can tell you that. I did look all of it up the other day, and like, Joe Manchin's agreed with Trump on somewhere around 50% of the fucking things that the Republicans brought up.
He's a moderate.
Kamala Harris is below 20 or around 20%, and that's mostly for shit that was just trying to open the U.S. again after the Republicans had shut it down.
That doesn't shock me. Manchin, I believe Manchin's more of a like a very moderate. So he can swing either way. Usually moderates are easier to sway toward one side of the aisle or the other based on whatever politics are in front of him. If it gives him a tactical advantage to win the next election, why not? That's typically how that goes.
It's also crazy the fucking amount of just misinformation that I've seen the past few fucking weeks come across Facebook. I don't know whether to fucking smack these people or thank them, because I've learned something every time that I've looked up this stupid fucking buffoonery that they put up and these stupid conspiracy theories. But it gets so fucking annoying, so frustrating. If you see something, fucking just research it. Oh my god, everything from fucking Pizzagate's still going around.
Ugh.
The Save the Children thing is trying to, QAnon has taken over that and has tried to run the...
All lives matter, not just children
All lives matter. Yeah.
All lives matter.
Yeah.
You can't say children lives matter. You can't say blue lives matter. You can't say black lives matter.
That means that they're on board with the pedophiles' lives mattering too, right?
There you go. All lives matter, ladies and gentlemen. You can't live in a world where you get to say bullshit like that, and you can't. I'm sorry, you can't do that. It's just like freedom of speech. Like people that use freedom of speech, the defense for people to say shit that they agree with, and then when someone says something they don't agree with, they don't tend to whip that defense out. And it's been there was I believe a study a couple years ago that showed people just tend to whip that out when it benefits them. Honey, you're not special. It applies to everybody. And if you're going to say all lives matter instead of black lives matter, you better fucking chill whenever someone says child lives matter, because guess what? All lives matter, motherfucker. And at what point, and I'm saying that sarcastically, obviously,
Of course.
children lives matter. Child's lives matters.
Children.
Pedophiles, I would probably argue, nah, not so much. Go to therapy
Right.
or go to jail. Those are your two options. Go to therapy or go to jail.
Both.
That's my opinion on it.
Preferably,
Arguably go to jail and get therapy while you're in jail and help you live out your life like that, whatever. But I find that very interesting. I almost posted it on Facebook, but I don't want the backlash with it. I'm not willing to go that route, but I will say it would cause a lot of fucking backlash. I'd probably have some conservative up in my inbox.
It's funny that just all of a sudden it just broke loose and you saw all these hashtags going up and shit, and all of these articles going up, and all of this shit that
matters.
And then trying to accuse the media of not covering this shit whenever they have been covering it. Like, what do you want to fucking happen other than it's up in the courts right now, and fucking Donald Trump giving his little messages to fucking Maxwell, telling her that, what was it, that he wished her well or something, which is almost as mafia as it fucking gets. And then, like, her lawyers and shit are tying up the court right now, not releasing documents. So, like, what more do you want to fucking be... Like, what more do you want covered? Whenever nothing's fucking happening with it right now. Whenever the shit isn't, like...
Well, and they say it's not being covered by media as they share an article of coverage from the media.
Yes.
Yeah. How many fucking articles? Like, listen, media doesn't just mean TV. Get your phone out, get a newspaper, read some shit, because it is being covered. We're not just pulling this out of our assholes.
It's the other thing. Like, how many of these fucking people are even watching TV to begin with, to even know? Almost no, like, I mean, most of it's, I don't know about you, but like most of the shit I watch is like Netflix and streaming fucking networks.
I don't typically
and things.
turn on cable TV. It's trash. So yeah, no, I'm gonna get my shit from journals and news articles from sources online. Like, I mean, and it's not just one source; it's multiple sources.
No, and that's another important thing for people to keep in mind is that even Fox News has accredited fucking journalists there. They aren't, you know what I mean? It's still not quite the Alex Jones fucking bullshit being thrown out constantly, but there are a lot of opinion articles that lean that fucking way from journalists they should probably fucking get rid of. But, you know what I mean? In general, those news stations like CNN and Fox, they still have decent journalists working for them that are trying to get truth out. And,
they sometimes have to bend to the network's
and they have
political
to,
lean.
Yeah, they have a set of rules and shit that they have to go by. They have to still abide by the shit to do that, unless it's an opinion article, which I think they should just leave out completely from news if it's going to be news. But you can thank Ronald Reagan for that.
You can thank him for a lot of things.
Yeah.
From the sounds of it.
Trickle down.
Yeah. Yeah, the next time you see children's lives matter, number one, please agree. And number two, sarcastically, maybe mention all lives matter. see how triggered you can make a conservative today?
I think it's funny that they kind of don't mention the whole pedophile ring that's been happening with the Catholic Church for fucking ever. Their focus isn't on that, strangely enough.
Catholics' lives matter.
Yeah.
They matter.
Catholic pedophiles matter.
Amoeba lives matter. Bacteria lives matter. Blade of grass lives matter, Dan.
Is COVID alive? COVID lives matter?
Yeah, COVID actually is alive. George Carlin's take on the sanctity of life, it applies so perfectly in this situation. This whole argument, George Carlin and the sanctity of life, his take is amazing. It's so accurate.
I have a very special guest tonight. He sold his soul to the devil for comedy and politics. Steve Hill. How are you doing, Steve?
Hey, I'm good, man. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
You surviving in this COVID environment?
Oh, as best as I can. I managed to make my way out of the masturbatorium for the night, so we're good to go now.
Just keep your distance and wear your mask. That's all I can say. Yeah. Nice to have me on as a guest, man. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I appreciate having you on. You being on. I know I've been trying to get you on for a little bit, and I kept having issues on my end, and probably seemed like I just wasn't going to get my shit straightened out, but I finally did. So here we are.
Oh yeah. Ready for a conversation with Satan.
Yeah. Would you like to give a little bit of background on yourself first before we go into questions and stuff?
Yeah, let me give you a quick resume right quick, man. I was born on the north side of St. Louis, dirt poor. Graduated high school early, went straight to the United States Marine Corps.
Wow.
Because I come from a military family. I got men in my family who have fought in wars all the way back to the Civil War. My father fought World War II. My brother fought Vietnam. We got another brother that's 20-some year retired Marine, and I myself, the Marine Corps veteran. So,
well, thank you for your
that's
service.
part of it. No problem. I left the Marine Corps, went to Los Angeles, became worked in my field as an aerospace machinist, made a lot of inanimate objects for weapons of war and shit to kill people with, mostly the B-2 bombers and the stealth bombers. And got kind of got bored with that, so I decided I would do something a little bit more exciting. I went and did 10 years in prison.
Oh.
As a state correctional officer.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, I was on the other side. Yeah, man. Yeah, I was
That's probably the best side to be on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd rather be doing the locking up than be the lockee. But, that's our capitalistic society is meant to have prisons. Trust me.
Yeah.
So anyways, man, yeah, I was I think I was in not even a few months and the LA riots broke out and whew, you should have seen how many black people were coming to prison. All the parole violators and people who broke probation, and it was just a major influx. And that kind of tipped me off right there to let me know something is wrong with the system with this many black men locked up in these cell blocks. So
yeah. And I've seen people post shit about the 90s being this great thing that we ought to get back to and shit, and I'm like, are they completely fucking forgetting about the riots and shit? Like,
oh yeah, they don't understand, man. The 90s was one of the worst decades for black people I can ever remember. It was horrible.
Yeah, it
was fucking horrible. You had Bill Clinton and our candidate Biden.
Yeah.
With that 94 omnibus crime bill, that thing put all these racist ass cops on the streets, basically unvetted. Most of them from our great military. They built so many prisons. I mean,
they put shit tons of money into the fucking police force at the time. Started hiring new people, and then there wasn't anything for them to fucking do.
Yeah.
So they found shit to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're gonna always find something to do as far as law enforcement, as long as we have this financial system, this capitalistic system we have, we're going to have black men in prison. Instead of them building prisons, they should build more colleges and put black people in it. Then you won't have a need for prisons. Yeah. But, that's just how shit works. So anyways, my career I had a little difference of opinion with the administration. And I took a retirement from the prison system. But I got a whole lot of interesting prison stories. Trust me, a whole lot of them. Some of them even include Suge Knight. Oh,
nice.
Anyways, I went into another career, transitioned, and I became a real estate appraiser. I opened an Anniversary Real Estate Appraisal in 2004, and boy, it was good there for a minute till the mortgage meltdown happened. Everybody think it happened in 2008. Actually, it happened in 2007 when my business dried up. I don't even think I was doing one appraisal a week because the banks immediately quit lending, and they realized the enormity of the situation we had on our hands with all the distressed properties and the foreclosures and people walking away from their homes and, just the whole economic collapse of our system, basically. Real estate is approximately a third of our economy. But, yeah, I seen that happen.
Banks had to raise their rates just to be able to afford that new yacht every year. Terrible.
Yeah, they had to start charging people for parking in their parking lot, shit like that. Yeah, but I saw that happen, man, and that really had an adverse effect on my life. I mean, just as a human being, because I was in the front row of this roller coaster called a mortgage meltdown. If you ever see one in real life, run. But I was in the front row of this, and I saw all these people lose their homes. A lot of black people. Home ownership is right now at an all-time low in the African-American community. A lot of black people lose their homes. And guess what? Nobody fucking went to jail. Yeah. And then I think back just a few short years ago, standing on a prison yard, releasing cell block 5 on Charlie Yard at Lancaster State Prison, Los Angeles County, and just watching for like 15 straight minutes, black men walk out of the cell block.
Wow.
And it really fucking irritated me when I go, these motherfuckers get away with stealing all this money and nobody goes to jail. But let somebody ride with a broken tail light, the shit will escalate up to like a murder warrant somehow. And now we have a disproportionate amount of former slaves in the prison system. I mean, yeah, it's amazing. But anyways, back to my story. When I saw in 2008 when Barack came around, I was thinking, wow, brother made it as president. I could at least tell some jokes. So I started doing comedy, I think around 2007. And it's been an interesting comedy career. Right now, nobody's doing comedy since COVID invaded our lives. But performing for the atheist community at these conferences and events, and I'm basically performing for like 98% white people. Black people, even if we are atheists, we ain't gonna be out there on Front Street at a conference, tooting our atheist horns and shit,
Right.
because we just don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a different world in our culture. Our people had that shit beaten into them, and now
Yeah.
they're pretty much stuck.
I've mentioned it once, and I kind of it almost comes across a little bit racist whenever I say it, but it's not meant that way. It's just that there are, like you said, there's a bigger deal made over it in the black community than what there seems to be in the white community with being an atheist. So
yeah, it's and the way I look at it, I really, really try to be sensitive to my people, and really, really I don't get any pleasure in. I got some black atheist jokes that they make people cringe, and that's what I was saying.
yeah,
To perform for white people is like, I performed in Denver. Denver, check this out. You ain't gonna believe this shit here. Denver had a conference called Celebrating the Diversity of the African American secular community, or black atheists or something. And there was a guy sitting near the front row, and I could tell he was enjoying the show.
right.
He was laughing a little bit harder than some of the other people. Other people were like downright fucking uncomfortable. But after the show, he came up to me and he said, Steve, that was the most fun I ever had being that fucking uncomfortable. And that guy kind of like, if I get one person like that every year, it'd be worth me doing comedy, because I'm not trying to get rich off doing atheist comedy. That's something you're not gonna get,
Right.
because I live right up the road from Hollywood, and that whole comedy thing is it's a whole different, it's an industry just like any other industry, cutthroat. It's who it's
Right.
connections, and begging people for stage time. So it's like, if I can use comedy though to reach those people and make them laugh, kind of like medicine, get a little laughter with your bad tasting medicine, because I'm gonna give your ass some truth in my humor.
Yeah.
So and that's it, man. I've just been I've been active, of course, in TST. I met Lucian Graves at a conference in St. Louis, and I decided really to give my soul to Satan.
I saw you've been rubbing elbows.
Yeah. Quite interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a chapter head here, co-chapter head in Los Angeles for a little while. I guess I don't work well with others, and others don't work well with me. So I had to kind of step away from TST, but I'm still a big supporter, because I believe in the concept. I believe in, if you want me to believe your bullshit and respect it, then if I'm a Satanist, I want you to believe my bullshit and respect it.
Yeah, that's like, where I am with it too.
Leave the hypocrisy bullshit at home.
Right.
You don't judge me for how I think, and I won't judge you for that fucking ancient fairy tale that you've been using to fucking keep people oppressed forever. So, yeah, that's about it. That's about it with me. What's happening with you?
All kinds of shit. I'm in fucking Ohio. I'm in a red state. There's been all kinds of crazy shit going on here, dude.
Is Kasich speaking tonight?
No, not Kasich anymore. It's what the fuck's his name? The turtle-looking motherfucker. Our albino turtle we have.
Yeah, the Kasich is speaking tonight at the Democratic conference. That's pretty much tells you how fucked up things
Jesus
have gotten.
Christ. I didn't even see that. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, hey man, I stay tuned in to the new, to write jokes. I've got jokes from 2016 I haven't even performed yet. Killer jokes on Trump, and
Right.
I just can't wait to get this fucking virus over with.
Yeah.
Pandemic. I mean,
It's not looking too good right now.
Right now. For
Yeah.
now.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I get some of it. But like we had talked before, our country's so capitalist driven that that's all they're fucking worried about. They aren't worried about the people themselves.
Right.
It's about the numbers.
These are the most inhumane bastards I've seen operating in a long time. When you devalue human life and rush to get the economy back open so everybody can start making money,
Yeah.
and you have no value. I mean,
Some of them never.
every human life is priceless.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get too far into that, let me bring it back a minute. How was it received after you came out as a Satanist in your personal life, and how was it with your political life?
Well, I guess I pretty much let everyone know when I ran for office in 2016 that I was a Satanist.
Yeah.
And people in my community are, Christian, hyper Christian. I mean, in Lancaster, the town up the street, more churches per capita than any other place in California. I mean, all of the sheriff's captains that run the sheriff stations, they're all super religious. Both mayors, super religious. The senator, the assemblyman, super religious. And it's actually, for me, it's like living under the Taliban, because all of these church people are connected. So,
right. Yeah.
So but everybody ran to look at me for being a Satanist, and that actually drove them to my website, and they saw that I was nothing but a big ass Bernie supporter. And I actually, out of 4 people, I came in third. Imagine that, a black Satanist running for office and doesn't come in last.
Yeah, I
hate to be number 4 in that contest.
Right. Yeah. I don't even know who came in last, but yeah, I saw that. Your numbers weren't fucking bad. Like, I really didn't think you did really fucking good considering the circumstances and everything, and being out about everything.
Yeah, I pretty much spent my own money. I had a little bit of support. I had some people, probably about $1,500 or something. Some low level. I was a low budget candidate. But the reason I did that was to, somewhere down the line, it's going to make it easier for just an atheist to come out and explain atheism and not believing in gods or deities, keeping it real simple so they can understand.
Right.
That's all it is. And the rest of everything else we want, we're probably at 95% in agreement with it. So let's see where we can work together.
Yeah. So, do you want to dive into what the TST is doing for the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I really can't answer that yet, because I talked to Lucian Greaves a few weeks. I think I was on his podcast, and we did discuss doing something. I know I told him I wanted to go. I not only do comedy, but I do some public speaking to let everybody know what's really going on.
Right.
I was supposed to go back to the temple, I call it, back in Boston.
Yeah.
And probably give a presentation, speak during the day, and then do comedy later on that evening. And I've protested with Melina Abdullah. She runs Black Lives Matter in LA. And we're just going to see if we could donate some of the money to BLM here in Los Angeles, because it's a pretty active group in LA.
Yeah.
Everybody was out in the streets. So, yeah, they stay busy with LAPD and the LA County Sheriff's Department. Black Lives Matter they're going to have to start building some condos in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we are, man. Like, you know, I'm suing the sheriff's department right now.
Yeah.
$1.1 million. Yeah. And I just want to get them into court to make them answer 2 questions. Was it religion or was it racism? Which one of those 2 reasons did you track me down, come to my house, and ask me why I was in your neighborhood? And I can pretty much guarantee you they have lost this one.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. It will be. But yeah, I'm going to you know, I know TST wants to do something. I'm gonna talk to my friend again and see if we can nail down some date. Lucian is like, he's better than me at quarantining. He don't want to even leave the damn house. I haven't seen him since it started. Usually see him a couple times a year. Yeah, but we're gonna do something, man. I'm gonna force them, even if I have to get pushy. You know, nobody wants to see a black pushy Satanist. But I'm going to. I want them to make a bold statement. You know.
Yeah.
I want them to make a bold statement. You know, like you know, they make bold statements for women reproductive rights, and they make bold statements for the LGBTQ plus community. I want to see TST make a bold, strong statement. I'm talking about some shit that's right on the verge of revolutionary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be great.
That's what I want to push TST to do. If I have no other contribution in TST, I want to push them on this Black Lives Matter issue, so where the rest of the world, the rest of the nation, don't see TST as just some young white goth kids with too much money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And heavy metal rock music. And
yeah.
I don't want them to think of TST like that. I mean, TST does shit in the legal world. It's where we should be working at. And they will take your raggedy ass to court if you fuck with them.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about TST.
Yeah.
So
I definitely.
I'm glad you asked me that question, goddammit, because you just pushed my hand and I say what I mean what I say. So I'll be talking to TST and look for something involving Black Lives Matter.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see them get more into that, and like they've already went on and had the abortion ritual that they put up. That's like in my state that has the heartbeat bill and stuff. It supersedes that, which is great. I mean, we need to be fighting for things like that and bodily autonomy in general. And I'd like to see them go even farther with that, with the death with dignity thing, if they can manage to get that pulled off. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people. My grandpa was one of them that died from cancer, just slow, agonizing death, and you know, anything we can do to help.
Yeah, I don't see why. You know, they only want certain choices, and they want to, you know, have a lock on certain moral issues as it relates to a body and your body's rights. I say when I know I'm on my way out, I don't want to go out suffering.
No.
I've suffered long enough.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I want to go out with dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Me too.
It's, you know, you go too far. Just like a man trying to tell a woman what and she can not fucking what to do with her body.
Right.
Like, are you serious? You got a dick and you trying to tell a woman what she can do with her reproductive organs, her precious reproductive organs?
Right.
Because I know I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and I mean it's medically proven and everything that it's more harmful, or you take more of a risk at actually carrying the child to birth than what you do to actually just have the abortion procedure done. So all of that time.
Yeah, I ain't even gonna make no comment because it's not even. It's not even my. I don't have a vagina.
Yeah.
I should be out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to go into a little bit on systemic racism?
Yeah. Let's. Where do you want to start at, man? 1619. You want to start with the Virginia slave codes? That's where they first started writing the language to keep us oppressed. Man, they set us free. I mean, yeah. Let's talk about. I mean, racism is so deeply entrenched in our laws, in our regulations. I mean, I'm a real estate appraiser, and I still come across, warranty deeds that state that no Negroes will ever purchase this property.
Wow.
I mean, how do you think that makes me feel? Now, here my dumb ass, I done been all out in the Marine Corps, risking my life for this country.
Right.
And worn a badge for 10 years. I'm, got my business. I'm everything America's supposed to be, and I'm not even treated like a fucking citizen.
No, I've said, like, the people bitching about the statues that got torn down and shit, I don't give a fuck about those goddamn statues. Like, if there's slave owners and shit that there's statues erected up, fucking tear them down. I don't give a fuck. Like, and if anybody has a right to fucking tear them down, it's the ones that had worked for no fucking wages, for free fucking labor for how goddamn long, and we've been held up financially by the black community since the existence of this country came about, and beyond then. But so like I said, if anybody has a right to tear them down, it's the people that this country profited off of for fucking centuries. And yeah.
It I don't know, man. It kind of, if you really think about it, it works both ways. I say keep them motherfuckers up.
Yeah.
I say keep them up.
Yeah.
Keep them up. Let's remind everybody what these motherfuckers did to us.
Yeah. Keep
them up. So, it could kind of work against you too.
Right.
But, for the most part, it is, I've seen people doing in my own town here, all the Republicans. This used to be a really Republican place, but the demographics are changing now.
Right.
They name things after politicians and, sheriff's deputies that got killed on the job. They name all of these. And it's kind of a way of kind of doing a sublime brainwashing of the community.
Yeah.
Kind of like, these are the good people,
Yeah.
Because around here in North Los Angeles County, I've yet to see like a Barack Obama anything.
Right.
Or anything that anybody that I could. It's not even a Martin Luther King Boulevard in the two cities I live next to.
Yeah. Wow.
In the Antelope Valley, North Los Angeles County. I mean, so yeah, that statue thing.
But like, as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of the way with the women's rights and shit. I'm a white dude. It shouldn't be up to me. Leave that up to you guys to decide what the fuck to do with the statues of slave owners. Like, I really don't have a voice in that, or I shouldn't. And I think the same for the fucking people, all of the white people that are counter-protesting and shit.
Yeah, it's a complicated. It's a really for us right now, and I consider myself Satan. Satan is a fucking patriot. I mean, I totally believe in America.
Yeah.
But I ain't gonna fool myself to, make me feel like we ain't got some fucking fixing to do.
Right.
We got some fixing to do. We can't right all of these wrongs by ourselves. And shit, I appreciate the white people that were marching with my ass out in the street, and there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
Mexicans, where I lived, it was beautiful, man. I kept going back out. My feet was hurting. Had to soak, but I kept going back out, man, because it was such a beautiful thing to see all of these people pointing out injustice. And it's been happening for a long time. So I say, shit, keep on it. Stay in the streets.
And that concludes the first part of our two-part episode. Special thanks goes out to Steve Hill. You can check him out on Facebook at Steve Hill 2020 or Steve Hill Comic on Instagram. The Vida Project is at vida.la. Tune in next week for part 2, and you'll get to hear the rest of our conversation and articles that wouldn't all fit in this episode. Our artwork is by Jamie Coptic. You can check out their artwork at jamiecoptic.studio. Music is by Bridge City Centers. You can check them out at bridgecitycenters.com. If you're struggling with mental health issues, I'd suggest going to seculartherapy.org. And if you're having trouble coming out of religion, recoveringfromreligion.org. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Facebook. And you can donate to us at paypal.me/skepticalsatanist.
Hail Satan, and hail yourself.